Under Solomon's rule, Israel reached its highest point. The kingdom was peaceful. Trade grew. Silver and gold became common. Solomon built palaces, cities, and great structures. His wisdom attracted visitors from faraway nations. One famous visitor was the Queen of Sheba. She traveled a great distance to test Solomon with difficult questions. She brought gifts of gold, spices, and precious stones. But when she heard Solomon's wisdom and saw his kingdom, she was amazed. She said, "The greatness I heard about was not even half the truth. Solomon had everything a person could desire: power, money, fame, respect." But slowly something began to change. The greatest danger to Solomon was not an enemy army. It was his own heart. Solomon married many foreign women from different nations. At first, these marriages were political alliances, but over time they influenced him. God had warned Israel not to follow the gods of other nations. But Solomon allowed his wives to bring their idols into his kingdom. The man who built God's temple began building places for false gods. His heart became divided. The same king who once asked God for wisdom began making choices that ignored that wisdom. As Solomon grew older, his relationship with God weakened. He still had wealth. He still had power. But his obedience was fading. The Bible says his heart was no longer fully devoted to God. This was a heartbreaking fall. A man who received supernatural wisdom failed to follow the very wisdom he was given. God warned Solomon that because of his disobedience, the kingdom would eventually be divided. The consequences would come after his death. Solomon ruled for 40 years. His reign began with peace and blessing, but it ended with problems and a divided heart. After Solomon died, his son Rehoboam became king. Because of Solomon's mistakes, the nation of Israel was split into two kingdoms. The glory that Solomon built did not last forever. The great king who had everything left behind a powerful lesson. Wisdom alone is not enough. A person must also have faithfulness and humility. The story of Solomon is one of the greatest stories ever told. A young man asked God for wisdom instead of riches. God blessed him beyond imagination. He built a magnificent temple. He became the most famous king of his time. But even the wisest person can fall if they stop following the right path. Solomon's life reminds us that success, wealth, and power cannot replace a faithful heart. A person can have the whole world and still lose what matters most. This was the story of Solomon, from wisdom to glory, and finally to fall. Long ago, in the land of Israel, there was a king unlike any other. He was blessed with unimaginable wisdom, incredible wealth, and a kingdom filled with peace. People traveled from distant lands just to hear his words. Kings and queens came to witness his greatness. His name was Solomon. But the story of Solomon is not only a story of success. It is also a warning, because the wisest man who ever lived made choices that slowly pulled him away from the God who blessed him. This is the complete story of Solomon, from wisdom to fall. After the great King David ruled Israel for many years, his life came to an end. Before David died, he called his son Solomon and gave him one final command: be strong, follow God's ways, and you will succeed. Solomon was young when he became king. He inherited a powerful kingdom, but he also carried a huge responsibility. Leading a nation was not easy. One night, God appeared to Solomon in a dream and said, "Ask for anything you want, and I will give it to you." Solomon could have asked for riches, a long life, or victory over his enemies. But instead, he asked for something different. He said, "Give your servant a wise and understanding heart to lead your people." God was pleased with his request. Because Solomon did not ask for selfish things, God gave him wisdom greater than any person before him. And God also blessed him with wealth, honor, and peace. Solomon's wisdom quickly became famous. People came from everywhere to hear him speak. His judgments were so amazing that people believed God's wisdom was with him. One of the most famous stories happened when two women came before Solomon. Both women claimed the same baby belonged to them. There was no evidence to prove who was telling the truth. Solomon calmly listened and then gave his decision. He ordered that the baby be divided in two. The real mother immediately cried out, "No, give the baby to her. Let him live." Solomon knew the woman who truly loved the child would never allow harm to come to him. He gave the baby back to the true mother. Everyone was amazed by his wisdom. Solomon's fame spread throughout the world. One of Solomon's greatest achievements was building the Temple of God in Jerusalem. For years, David had dreamed of creating a house where people could worship God. But God chose Solomon to complete the work. The temple was magnificent. Gold covered the walls. Precious materials filled the building. Thousands of workers spent years creating something beautiful. When the temple was finished, Solomon gathered the people. He prayed and dedicated the temple to God. He asked God to forgive his people when they turned back to him. The glory of the temple showed the greatness of Israel's God.